Hey there, folks. Welcome back to another episode of the East to West Hunts podcast. My name is Alex. I am your host. And today I wanted to talk about a recap of one of my hunts, which is the Aoudad, Texas hunt that I just came back from. So if you listened to my episode from last week, I did kind of jump in there and say that this is something that I was going to talk about. And here I am. I'm delivering on my promise. But anyways, I just got back from this hunt and it was a really, really good time. But more importantly, I think there's always good learned lessons that come from a trip of any sort, and it's always good to reflect on them. So, one of the things that I think is just important to start off with, if you haven't heard of Barbary sheep or Aoudad, it's just important to know what those animals are. Really briefly talking about, what the Aoudad is and where it came from. So it's certainly a sheep. That's why it's called Barbary sheep or Aoudad sheep, and they're not native to the United States. Okay, so they're actually native to North Africa. They ended up here in the early 1900s, and really they were brought for the purposes of zoos and essentially like private preserves per se. And they were introduced in Texas. So it sounds like there were 31 sheep introduced at the time in Texas. Don't know all the details into the reintroduction in like New Mexico or if they populated there or whatnot. But essentially, moral of the story is, right, you have them come into the country. Some of them get released. Some of them, jump a fence and end up being in the wild. Now they reproduce and so on and so forth. You kind of get the story there. But as far as I'm aware, they are spreading into other states. But if you actually like looked it up in detail, there are sheep in Texas, in New Mexico, and in California. And it sounds like they're in a couple of other states expanding, which would be, I think it was Arizona and Oklahoma. So clearly they're doing well. Now, I could only assume what these animals ate, right? And it's interesting to see the native vegetation, fauna, so on and so forth. But this has been my first experience actually hunting Aoudad. It was something that I've really wanted to do for a long period of time, and not necessarily being able to hunt sheep, right? I haven't drawn a bighorn or a desert bighorn or any of the other sheep species, and I have not gone out of the country to shoot any sheep. So I really wanted to get that sheep hunt experience, get into that rocky terrain, so on and so forth, and then also be able to just pick up and learn some new things as I go along, because it's, every species has similarities, but they also have big differences. A couple of them I will talk about later, but it's just important to kind of take away that information, put it in your piggy bank for future references. So, one of the big things, what do they eat? A lot of these places where they live, it's hot, it's desert like, it's very steep, rocky terrain. But, they're going to be eating grasses, shrubs, forbs, lichens. They are grazers primarily. And then, the interesting thing with certain species, similar to like deer, right? If you think of elk, they have to water all the time, where a deer is going to get a lot of its hydration from grasses and stuff that it's eating. And obviously they'll still want to go and grab water, but they don't have to have water as often as like a big elk does, right? Sheer body size and just, for the purposes of food, it's just a big factor for them. Now you jump into sheep. Sheep get primarily all of their moisture from plants, so they can go days without drinking water. So they're really well adapted to hot environments, and they can do really well in cold environments as well. They are extremely alert and weary, I can tell you that for sure. That's a definitive factor, and they definitely use the elevation and cliff faces for safety. So it's important to know, as you're really kind of going out to potentially hunt these animals, have that in the back of your mind. Sheep see really, really well. I would say that it's more similar to like a pronghorn. Obviously, I don't know all the details, and I have not been able to look into specific studies of how they see, but I can assure you they see very, very well. I just can't tell if it's 8 by 10 by 12 by whatever the factor is. There's a lot of details when you talk about antelope, for example. You're like, man, it's like having an 8 by pair of binoculars on them where they can see that much better than you, unless you actually have, binoculars in your eyes and you're able to go see them. So anyways, important stuff there. I think that they blend in very well with their environment. That's something that I noticed. However, I think you can pick them apart too. I mean, the terrain is definitely to their advantage in the color scheme, but they are a light brown. And if you start paying attention, you really can kind of pick them up. Both sexes, male and female, have horns. Just the males have much longer chaps. If you've never heard of chaps before, it's essentially they got these just like long hair that sticks out. It's pretty sweet. They look epic, especially up close and personal. Really, really cool species. It's one thing when you see them in pictures, when you see them in taxidermy, or you see an animal that was just harvested. It's pretty sweet. And just like any other sheep, right? They're adapted to being able to jump around and run around on the steep rocky terrain with their hoofs, however you want to call it. Really, really cool animals. So my reasoning, I obviously always try to research and figure out more about the animal, but then it's nothing like actually being there and hunting them, right? And I think it's one thing if you're around those areas and you see these animals, but it's another when you're actually hunting them, because now you're focused specifically on this animal versus, oh, I'm on vacation and I saw a sheep. Those are two completely different things. So having that in my mind and actually going after them definitely adds a different element to it, and really, really cool experience. So let's talk a little bit about it. I wanted to hunt these animals because, one, I haven't done that before. Two, I really like the rugged, tough stuff. Just something I enjoy, while others might not and think I'm crazy. Totally fine. I think the physicality, the workout aspect, the sheer enjoyment of doing something hard, I kind of live for that. So on the vice versa, when I have a really easy hunt, I really don't feel satisfied by it all that much. It's cool, but I think I enjoy the experience a little bit for other reasons. It might be for hanging out with other people, having a good camp, whatever the case is. But you give me a rugged hunt, I'm really thoroughly enjoying it and looking back and remembering the tough shit that I did, right? Now, one of the things about this species in Texas is it's considered a exotic species. So instead of having to potentially draw a tag, which you can in certain areas, but you also can go on private property, right? There's all these ranches. And when I'm talking about ranches, I'm not talking about a high fence ranch where they're not able to go anywhere and you're, shooting fish in a barrel. I'm talking about like 100,000 acres of private property. These animals freely roam in the mountains, and you're hunting them. You just have to have access because it's private property. So it's a little bit different than walking around on public land. But with that, you're basically using this exotics license to cover it off. You can get a 5-day exotics license. It's pretty cheap, and you're off. And it's a lot different than having to go through the draw process, so on and so forth. So this is a pretty good opportunity for like an over-the-counter hunt. I think this adds into that whole like do-it-yourself hunt aspect and a really good opportunity to it. But nonetheless, I got an invite from one of my really, really close friends, Jason. He was going out with another one of his buddies, and it just seemed to be the perfect opportunity for the time of year to get out there and hunt. So why not? I jumped on the opportunity to have a good time, experience something new, and here we go. We got to this ranch, which is huge, and I quickly realized that this is a very, very vast country. I didn't really know what to expect when it came to how many different peaks and different drainages. Like, I didn't really know in my mind what that was going to look like. Something also to know in Texas, total side thought, but a lot of times you are not really told much detail. It's almost like it's hush hush until you get into Texas, and then somebody will be like, oh yeah, meet here, and then you're going to meet with so and so. They're going to drive you into this area, and then you're going to go hunt. It's really strange. But this was a trip that I did not plan myself, and I really wanted to not be the planner of it. I was just rolling with it, and as much as that's kind of tough, I was into enjoying the experience. So with that, not being able to go on Onyx or any other map and know exactly what you're looking at ahead of time, it's a little bit different from what I'm typically used to. So anyways, rolling with the punches, super vast. There is some water through the ranch, but a lot of the area, there is no water. I mean, it is desolate. You could be walking for days without seeing another person or without getting to water. So like dehydration, death out in the middle of the desert, like that's a total real deal scenario potentially for people. Anyways, we get into our so-called camp, which was a pretty broken down place and a really kind of historic, cool past to the area, which was impressive to me. But nonetheless, we did have a side by side. My buddy Jason's friend brought a side by side, so that was a nice add. I don't think you could do this hunt without a side by side because you have to get into particular areas to then actually go hike for miles. So these roads, dirt road, definitely off-road style roads. I mean, it was pretty gnarly driving around on them. We ended up getting a flat and so on and so forth. So luckily we had an extra tire, but nonetheless, we had basically what I would say two main areas. So the very first day we went out glassing right in the afternoon for a couple hours. We had like 3-4 hours left to the day. So we were like, let's make do at the time. We go out and we get to some really high peaks to just glass. I mean, you can glass 360 around you, which is pretty sweet. And we start glassing. I will add about glassing real quick. This was the very first time on a hunt I did what I was terrified of doing. I figured out this would be the perfect time, but I only took my SIG stabilization binoculars in a 16 power. It was the only bino I took. I did have a tripod because I was videoing some stuff here and there, but this was the first time I did not take my Swaros and I was not depending on my tripod the whole time. And anyways, I'll talk more about that, but it was an interesting experience for that and good lessons learned there as well. Anyways, we're glassing pretty quick. We pick up 2 rams and then we're kind of off to the races. So Jason and his buddy Mark decide that they're going to go down and shoot.
Attention hunters. Are you sick and tired of the complicated draw systems and tag applications that take place out west? Or maybe you want to plan a western hunt or maybe one of your dream hunts and you don't really even know where to start. Well, that's where East to West Hunts comes in. We take care of everything for you. We'll do the tag applications. We just need to put a strategy in play for you of what you're trying to do and when you're trying to go. Whether it's short term, mid-term, or long term, we want to have that play and that strategy together. And when you do draw a tag, we can look at do-it-yourself options such as hunt plans that detail out exactly how to hunt those areas, or we can get you booked with a guide and outfitter in that specific unit or area. So don't leave that hunt to chance. Give us a call, set up a time on the website, contact us on social media, whatever it is, and let's get planning towards that dream hunt of yours. And let's make it a reality. Check us out on www.east2westhunts.com. Again, that is www.east2westhunts.com. Also check us out on Instagram, YouTube, and podcast. Thanks so much. Talk to you soon.
And I'm kind of slowly going behind them. I'm videoing and doing my thing. And we're essentially getting to one peak or point to then shoot across canyon at these rams. So we're over 1,000 yards away. We get to basically within 310, 315 yards to shoot straight across. And the sun is directly in our eyes. So like I have the camera on these rams. I'm videoing it, but I can tell it's really difficult to see. Like when I'm even taking my binoculars up, the glare is just awful. I can only imagine what it's like in a rifle scope. And needless to say, Mark can't see through his rifle scope at all. And Jason can barely see. He's getting glimpses, so on and so forth. He ends up finding the sheep in his scope. But we had 2 unsuccessful shots, both over the rams, about 6 inches, which, obviously no harm, no foul there as far as the animals getting injured, but they end up going up and over, and that was pretty much the night for us. But learn lesson, right? How to use that topography, what time of day that we expect them to come out at this point, so on and so forth. And one of the things that I was paying attention to as we were driving around, we were looking at all these sunny spots, and I'm thinking, and I'm saying, it makes no sense that they would be in the sun. It's hot. It's 85 degrees. We got to go look at the shaded stuff. As we turned, when we're looking at the shaded stuff, that's where these rams were. They're coming across kind of the middle of this mountainside that's shaded. So point one, definitely using the shade. I can check that off, saying like that's pretty typical for what I would expect. And I really kind of compared this to mule deer hunting in mountainous terrain in hot weather. So that was kind of my comparative analysis, just getting in there and really what I was looking for. Needless to say, that evening kind of goes by. The next day, we decide that we're not going to go to this area that we saw those rams. We're going to go to another area and check it out, which was kind of by the water. And this huge canyon path, it's like a dry riverbed, and we were walking for miles to glass. We split up. So basically, three of us split up. Jason was kind of the furthest over, and he's glassing some areas. I'm above him in another spot, looking over into another area. And then Mark was kind of back by the water, and he's looking up. Needless to say, we pretty much wasted half the day there not seeing anything. Mark ended up seeing one small ram. We ended up heading back into camp, kind of regrouping, figuring out what we were going to do. And then we actually ended back up over there for the afternoon, seeing like it looked great. I mean, honestly, the topography, everything said that the sheep should be there, but we just didn't see anything. So pretty much like we lost a whole day there. And then in the following day in the morning, we decided to split up, where Jason and I actually went back over there by the water. We hiked even further. We checked out a bunch of different areas, and we still saw nothing. And when I say we saw nothing, we saw just about everything but odd-head sheep. We saw wild burros, wild horses, wild cattle, which is hilarious because they're not fat at all, right? It's really funny what you see on like a farm. These cattle are like pretty fit looking, almost like athletic cattle, and they're literally like on the side of the mountains. So it's hilarious to see them where like you would see Aoudad potentially, or deer, or whatever the case is, and they're looking at you like, what the hell are you? You know, so it's kind of comical. And you know, there were mule deer around. There was certainly life around, but no sheep. So as that kind of midday time hits, Mark had hit up another area, and we were going to go check back essentially where we saw those sheep the first day. In my mind, I kept playing out, you know, they need to be sheltered from the sun. It doesn't make sense that an animal with a hide on in 85-degree weather would be in sunny areas. So like all I was looking at was shady outcroppings, right? So like I was picturing, just like if I was hunting mule deer in the mountains, you're going to have some rocks that are outcroppings essentially from the side of the mountain, and you're going to see these deer that would just hang out right in the shade, where they're going to find one random shrub that they have some shade from, and they're going to glass right under there. Well, there weren't really shrubs to do that. It's pretty much just rock and cactus, and everything is either trying to poke you or kill you out there, or you're going to like have a slide off the side of the mountain. So, you know, that's just how I looked at it. I was like, okay, the only spot that they really could hide is shady outcropping. So like, where the hell are these animals? They're like ghosts. So like they either don't exist or they're just not here. Like they're in a larger group, and we're just missing the whole group. And we were not seeing any females, like no ewes. We were just seeing rams, which I thought was interesting too, because you always hear and you also see large groups of ewes, and then you see some bachelor groups of rams, and the ewes were nowhere to be found. So that was really interesting to me. Anyways, we end up going for the afternoon out where we were, and the setup was that we were going to split up again. Mark and I were going to go down this old riverbed that we were going to walk 1.5 miles, 2 miles, and try to check into these other drainages that we couldn't see and look around and so on and so forth. And Jason was going to play out another area, basically like north of us. Anyways, what ends up happening, we end up getting with the ATV, we park basically to the end of this dirt road, and we get to this old dry riverbed, and we're all taking a break, grabbing a snack, whatever, talking. Mark turns around and he's like, dude, look, there's 14 sheep coming up the drainage, going straight up this saddle. So we're like, we're getting all our rifles set up, whatever. I'm looking at them. These sheep just won't stop moving, essentially. And the best shot we could get was essentially 500 yards. Nothing ends up happening there. Jason ends up saying, all right, well, what are we going to do? We basically say like, hey, you're going after them. We have a plan of going up this riverbed. So up until this point, we're pretty mystified, right? We're like, where the hell are these sheep? Why are they not in the shade? Why can't we find them? We figured out what they were eating because we could see the other two rams from the day before. They kept munching on these little prickly pear cactus things, and it makes sense too, right? Because if you were to actually like crack one open, it's got moisture in it, so that's definitely like their food source. And you can tell as you're glassing or you're looking at some of them when you're walking by, you could tell that they've been eaten because you can see basically bites from these sheep and these prickly pears. However, a lot of them, I mean, there's so many of them, they could be eating them anywhere, right? So like, why would they pick one spot over the other? So again, to my point, I figured it would be shade related, right? Like where they're going to get some relief is where they're going to be, especially in the afternoons. I think it makes sense that in the mornings, first thing in the morning, it's a little chilly. That sun's going to come out the first half hour. Maybe they're going to be in some kind of sunlight, and then they're going to go in bed and be in some kind of shaded areas. Anyways, so we go down this riverbed. Jason ends up following them all the way up into this saddle and down. Basically, he ends up continuing going on that way. Mark and I go up into this drainage, and we don't see anything. I mean, we spent basically the remainder of the afternoon in there, and I thought for sure we were going to see some stuff. Nothing. And we end up coming back. Well, when we end up coming back, Jason's essentially coming back, and he ends up telling us that he shot a ram. And now we're getting kind of the scoop from him, and he's pretty far up. So he basically ended up going up the saddle, coming back off down, runs into a group. They end up splitting. He ends up following them, runs into another group, except he does not believe they're the same sheep. So basically now he's kind of crisscrossed. These sheep are moving around. We definitely got into them, that's for sure. But he ends up sitting at the top of the saddle, and he's glassing, and finally sees a butt of a sheep go into a cave. So this is where like the mind blowing aspect comes in, right? Because I was so damn adamant on shade, but these areas had, they have history. They had Indians that basically used to use these areas to live. There were caves. Now, not necessarily paying attention to the caves directly, but crevices, so on and so forth. I'm looking at outcroppings, but the key was we needed to find where they could go into the mountainside. Well, he found it. He found where they could go in and essentially be standing and still be covered completely in the shade. He ends up smoking a really nice ram at 210 yards in the cave. And when he shoots in there, 14 sheep run out of this cave, including the ram. Ram ends up dying, and now the pack out starts. So Jason actually ends up back at the trailhead. He's dying of thirst, essentially. So he pounds like 4 bottles of water, grabs a snack, and then ends up going to get the rest of the sheep. And this is kind of where things started adding up for us, right? So it was like, okay, we found the elevation. We found where they're hanging out. It's telling us that all these animals are now in particularly this area. They're not in the other area by the water that we were focused on, because every time we've seen sheep now, they've all been on this side of the mountain, which is significantly farther apart, right? They're not that close by. So that's fine. We're figuring it out, but we're really on like day 2.5 of a 3-day hunt. So lesson here to take away, I've always been a big proponent of it takes you about 3 full days to really get your bearings. That first day you might see some stuff, but you're figuring things out. it takes you really 3 days to feel like you got your bearings, and probably another 1 to 2 to get shit done. And that's like a 5 day hunt. So, in my opinion, this hunt was really, really short. I don't think 3 days is enough to hit a new area and really just like rock it out unless you get lucky, right? So, for us, we definitely could have knocked 2 sheep down that first day and potentially been successful in 3 days. But if you talk to any of the folks hunting there or that know the area, or the ranch hand in the area, like we were asking, how many people tag out over here by themselves, and they're like, not many people, right? Like for us, the fact that we had the opportunity to tag out is amazing. So that makes you feel good. But needless to say, we still had half a day to knock this out. So anyways, all gets wrapped up. We get back into camp. Next morning, we decide we're going to go into that same area, but Mark and I were going to go up the mountain and essentially just glass from the highest peak. We were going to glass for the first couple hours. Jason was going to hit another area with the side by side and glass kind of further apart to see other sides of the mountain, and then we could reconnect. Well, anyways, like first hour into the morning, Mark is like, he's glassing one side. He's glassing like west. I'm glassing east. We're just trying to pick apart different areas, and I'm looking I'm looking at any opening in rock crevices at this point to see if I can find any sheep. Sure as hell, Mark's like, hey, I've found some sheep about a mile and a half away, and they're literally where we were the day before in that riverbed area. So super cool to see. Sure as hell, we're looking. This is where those 16s actually came in pretty handy, because I did not have a spotter. And again, that's a little bit different, but these binoculars are great. If you put them on a tripod, they're magical. But even without a tripod, like just hand holding them, the stabilization is pretty phenomenal, where you can get a pretty darn good accurate look at what's going on and not feel like you're just all over the place. But if you can put the stabilization on and you put them on a tripod, I mean, there's like no movement whatsoever. Even if you got wind or whatnot, it is so still. But needless to say, that 16 power at a mile and a half, you still feel like you're really, really looking at stuff pretty darn close. And of course, there's 2 caves right where these sheep are, and we're watching these rams come down. There are ewes. We're watching them feed, so on and so forth. One thing that I forgot to mention that Jason had said about the ram, he said that he saw his buck go into the cave, and then what was the giveaway was there was a ram that was essentially like a lookout. He got on top of the cave and bedded down. So basically, they have an assigned lookout of who's kind of guarding to sound the alarm on what's happening while all these sheep are bedded. Well, kind of use that for reference on this scenario, because Mark and I are sitting here like, okay, that's kind of a far scenario of going after them. We had about 3 hours left to hunt before we were done for the day, well, done for the trip. And we're sitting there going like, okay, well, what are the chances of these animals being there by the time we get down the mountain, go down in the riverbed, go all the way around, and now we're supposed to go up and shoot? And the conversation became like, I'm sitting there going, I want to see them bed. Like, if I can see one of them bed and we know that they have a lookout scenario, then that's going to be the key. Well, sure as hell, 10 minutes into it, Mark and I are talking, deciding what we're going to do. We see this big ram bed at the top while all these other sheep are feeding. And that was like, boom, let's go. Like, we know they're going to be there. So we literally book it down. And the night before we booked it down this drainage, it sucked. I mean, literally thorns and just everything trying to freaking stab you. It took us like 35 minutes to get down this thing. We book it down that thing. It takes us 15 minutes to get to the riverbed. So, I mean, we were moving, and we both agreed it like did not suck as bad as it sucked the night before. So it was really funny. But we had 3 liters of water a piece, and we just, we're like, okay, we got water, we got a few snacks. Let's make this happen. So we get there, and I know on my map, on my OnX, I had already marked kind of spots of where these sheep are. But we basically were going, this drainage kind of goes, like, think of like how a snake would slither. It's almost like forming these S's, and these sheep are like on the backside of this mountainside, but we need to go through this turn to then get a glimpse of the furthest part of the mountainside. And the further we turn, we can see more inward of it. And that's where things get a little bit hairy. So as I mentioned, sheep see really well, and the wind was on our side. Wind's in our face in the river bottom. We're going around. We get to this turn. I put up my binos, and on literally the mountainside, they're pretty much right at the edge. They're skylined on the edge. There's three rams, and sure as hell, all three of them are like looking straight at us. And I'm like, damn it. Like they see us. The shot at that point was 510 yards. And I feel confident shooting at 510 yards. The factor was Mark did not want to shoot he wanted to shoot less than like 300 yards or so. And ideally I would as well. So we decided that we were going to kind of back up, and we were going to go up this other mountainside and get to a point that was like a peak that would look over into that drainage. And then that shot was going to be about 310 yards. So that was the play. Now, mind you, I'm super confident in this play. I'm thinking this is going to be fantastic. It's going to work. The sheep are there. Yes, they saw us, but we're not really a threat to them because they're way above us, and it's all good. And as soon as we get about, God, it felt like we got 20 feet up into this old riverbed deal going up the mountainside, I literally feel the wind shift, and I can feel it up against my neck. And I turned to Mark, and I gave him a few choice words of saying like, we're screwed. And, Mark's like, I mean, this is kind of our only option, man. We don't have much time. Like, we got to do this. And I'm like, I agree. But just like going through my head, I'm like, we're screwed. So we get up to this point, and we basically get right up. We're skylining now. We look over. There ain't a damn sheep anywhere. Not one. So we're literally sitting there for 20 minutes. We're glassing, and I'm running all these scenarios through my head of like, okay, so did the sheep spook because they saw us? I don't think so. They definitely winded us. But now I'm thinking like, so how many sheep were there? Were there just the three that were skylined and they were already making their way on the backside of the mountain? Or were they all in that drainage, but we could only see the furthest ones because we didn't turn further in because we didn't want to blow our cover even more? All these things kind of go through your mind. So anyways, we get up there, we're looking into these caves, and Mark's like, you want to shoot into the caves and see what happens? And I'm like, yeah, that's probably our best bet at this point, right? Because when Jason shot his ram, he said that he shot in the cave, shot his ram, and 13 other sheep ran out. So we're like, all right, let's play this out, So we do like a 3 count. We shoot into these caves. Not a damn thing comes out, and that kind of like solidified my thought of like, yeah, they winded us. They went over the other side. Everything up until that point went perfect. I mean, it was spot and stock scenario. We got to the area. I had it marked. Everything was great. If I had another day or two, no doubt that we would have tagged out because we were in the sheep. We found the play calls, but we just ran out of time. And it is what it is, but really cool experience. And I would highly encourage that anybody and everybody, if you have the opportunity, go and do it. I think it's a really, really cool hunt. It will test you physically, that's for sure, which I think is great, especially as you're prepping for other hunts. You can do these hunts in January, February, March. You can do them in the fall, but God, it would be super awful from the heat. I mean, we had 84 to like 86 degrees every day. We did get a tad bit of rain, but aside for that, like, I mean, it's just warm. It's hot. It's physically demanding. It's mountainous terrain. And I mean, it will test you, but it's a really, really good experience. I would highly encourage you to do the daily grind that you put into that. I think that my takeaways of this were a few. One of them was I kept looking at outcroppings, not considering actually like animals going inside the mountainside. That's something that I have never experienced because that's not necessarily always available for these animals, right? It's usually some different kind of cover. So if you do one of these hunts, I would encourage you to kind of look at holes in the mountainside if they do exist. The other one is take your physical fitness seriously. I think that's a big factor to it because it does play into it. The more physically capable you are, the better you're going to be able to handle it physically and mentally, because if you feel good about your physicality, you're mentally there. If you suck physically, you're mentally going to check out pretty quick. That's going to ruin your hunt. The other one, be prepared to shoot long distances. That the thing that I kept playing into my head was I should have shot at 510 yards, but on a unselfish aspect, I think it's a dick move to shoot at 510, and then I would have screwed Mark over. I felt way better that I would have been shooting with him if we did like the same 3 count that we did when we were up there together. I think that would have been a really successful play. So, it is what it is. Kind of play it out there, but be able to shoot long distances, that's for sure. I think 500 yards is a pretty good distance. I like to think up to 700 yards is pretty realistic. I'm not that guy that's saying go shoot a mile or anything like that, but if you can shoot up to 700 yards consistently, you should be really, really good shooting across a drainage at 3, 4, 500 yards, or across canyon per se. So I think those are big. The other thing, I mean, they're pretty gnarly animals. You think about all the cactuses and stuff around there. I mean, they're in that all the time. They're pretty big, but on top of it, they're just gnarly creatures. They're living in some tough stuff. You got to appreciate what they live in. They have figured out how to survive, and an animal's number one job is to figure out how to live. And for us, we have a lot of different things that are priorities to us. So to them, they definitely got the upper hand, and you got to know that they have a great eyesight. And I think it's freaking smart of them. I don't know if all Aoudad do this, but the groups that we were hunting, the fact that they have a lookout, that's pretty impressive. I thought that was pretty sharp. So my closing thoughts, I highly encourage you to go do something like this. I think it's super fun. I will definitely do it again. I would love to get a nice ram down. And I think that you should just really kind of prep for the tough stuff, which is be in really good shape. Again, this is like an over-the-counter scenario, so it might cost you less in getting the tag. Super easy to do that with a license. However, you might pay to play as far as getting onto property, or having to just do a guided kind of a deal because maybe you don't have a side-by-side or whatever the case is. So be prepared to spend some money. Probably tell you somewhere in between $500 to $7,500. And if you have questions or whatnot, I would definitely reach out. I'd be more than happy to connect with you and certainly plan the hunt for you as well. I think there's a lot of good stuff out there. So I hope you enjoyed hearing about this episode. If you got questions, please reach out. A couple ads for you here. One, it is tag application season, folks. And if you have not been applying, or you would want to get applying, please reach out ASAP. Go ahead and book a time on the website at east2westhunts.com. Go ahead and hit that free consultation button and book a time on my calendar. And go ahead and follow along as well. There's a lot of stuff on Instagram that I post, which is at East to West Hunts, and YouTube as well. So these podcasts are on video on Spotify or YouTube, and then they are on audio on Amazon and on Apple. And the last thing, as you know, I did release a masterclass that working through 360 Sportsman. So that is live right now. You can get that at a essentially pre-sale pricing, which is very nominal at 30% off. We're talking $34, not expensive at all. And it's about 3 hours of content with lots of modules for you folks. So if you're interested, go ahead and check that out as well. Link is in the show notes. If you guys need anything, please reach out to me. Otherwise, I will see you on the next episode. And remember to scout, hunt, and repeat. Thanks.